Okay, so as I've been talking about, we know a lot of agency heads, some surprising ones actually, told their employees not to respond to that email asking federal workers to justify their jobs by 11:59 p.m. tonight. But among the more than 2 million recipients of that email, I'm sure many of them may have. I mean, this whole saga has raised the question, who's actually going to read all those responses? Like, where does this information go? Well, now we know. NBC News is reporting today that DOJ will feed all those emails into an advanced AI system, and that the AI system will determine whether someone's work is mission critical or not. What could go wrong there? I mean, in other words, they could use AI to decide who to fire. And if that sounds extremely sketchy to you, it sounds extremely sketchy to me too. I mean, DOJ tried this exact same thing at the Department of Education earlier this month, basically feeding sensitive federal data into AI to target cuts. As the Washington Post reported at the time, feeding sensitive data into AI software puts it into the possession of a systems operator, increasing the chances it will be leaked or swept up in cyber attacks. So yeah, I mean, having a machine decide the value of positions in our federal government and determine the future of people's livelihoods, that all sounds pretty risky on its own to me in more ways than one. Oh, and by the way, the Department of Health and Human Services is now advising its employees that if they choose to respond to the mass email, assume that what you write will be read by malign foreign actors and tailor your response accordingly. Good to know, I guess. I mean, joining me now is somebody who knows a lot about national security issues. I'm sure he's concerned as well. Senator Andy Kim of New Jersey. Before getting to Congress, he worked on President Obama's National Security Council and also for President Bush's national security team, I think. So did you work at
I was on the USAID
the USAID side, but you also worked for him as well in the national security space. Let me just start by asking you, that's a lot I just walked through. And that HHS note is pretty jarring.
Yeah.
I mean, help us understand, because you've worked in this space, like, what is the risk of this type of information going through an AI system?
Well, I'm glad HHS raised that, because that's what went through my mind. You know, the idea that, you know, if you're going to try to send out a mass email to all federal employees, have them by name, identify themselves and what their tasks are. I mean, basically, we're doing China's job for them. You know, they can lay off some workers in Beijing because we're actually doing that work for them here. And I just find that to be appalling. I mean, look, and even if it's not foreign malign actors, you know, clearly with the DOJ team, and we got malign actors here who are just trying to undermine the federal government. And I think that's something I want the American people to understand. This is not about efficiency. This is about loyalty. This is about having Trump and Musk put in the people that are going to be beholden to them so that they can push forward on their corrupt agenda, whether it's the tax cuts to the billionaires or, you know, Musk siphoning up all this data to feed into his own large language model AI system. Like, where is that data going?
Well, that's the question, right? I mean, and the collateral damage of this, which, you know, he paints it as this simple ask, like everybody can just do 5 things they're working for. But you worked in the national security space in government for years. I mean, how much of that could you have put in an email like that and felt safe about it?
Well, you know, there's a reason why OMB set out a directive last year that prohibits the use of AI when it comes to employment performance and management. This is not allowed in our government. This is prohibited explicitly, and that OMB doctrine is still on the books today. So, you know, this is something that goes against what has been prescribed and is prohibited because of this purpose. You know, how can you determine the performance? I was a civil servant before. I worked in multiple different performance in agency. I want the American people to know, like, there is accountability. There is oversight for federal government employees. It's not like there is just lawlessness there like we see the lawlessness in the Trump administration. You know, there is that effort. And a lot of people in government, they want to make sure things get more effective and efficient. It's not like they are just trying to, you know, as Musk says, you know, work for a criminal organization. And so, like, yes, like, there is accountability, there is oversight, but it has to be done in a safe way. Otherwise, we're literally just handing over data to spies, to other countries that they can use now to target our own government employees.
Which is a collateral, huge damage risk of this. Let me ask you, because you and I have talked about, I mean, you just ran for Senate. You've been in how many? 70,
I just passed the 75 days.
75 days. Congratulations. But you've been very in touch with your constituents. You've held town hall meetings and things. What are people saying to you in New Jersey about DOJ and what they're seeing Musk and his team do here?
Yeah, you know, and this actually crosses across the political spectrum. I have had people, conservatives, Republicans in New Jersey say, hey, look, like, I've always been against government being able to get more and more data, infringe upon my privacy. And frankly, a lot of my colleagues in Congress, they are the first to jump up and say, keep the government out of our data, out of our information, out of our lives in that way. But where are they right now? So that is something that I think people are understanding. I mean, look, people certainly understand that the status quo in our country, that government and politics, it was broken. There are things we need to change. And I'm ready to have that debate and that conversation about how we can fix things. But this is not the way we go about this. This is just putting our country at risk, giving adversaries and competitors access to this information. Like, when I've been meeting, I was out at the Munich Security Conference and elsewhere, and other countries are literally like, these leaders come to me, they're like, what is happening in America? That's literally, they talk to me as if, like I have a sick puppy or something. They're just like, are you okay? Like, what is happening in your country? And it's really sad to just see how much our reputation has taken a hit and how much other countries are literally just watching what's happening in America in shock, that the most powerful country in the world can be reduced to this level of damage in just a matter of weeks.
You may have a few sick puppies here. It's maybe not just one. Let me just, because I'm sure you're asked by these foreign leaders, and I'm sure you're asked in New Jersey too. What can you do about it in the Senate? You're in the minority in the Senate. The Republicans have majority control. There are some Republicans who might decide this is too much. What would you like to see the Senate do to kind of hold this to a greater account?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, we look across all of our tools. So, we've been working closely with the state's attorney generals to be able to have the litigation aspect. I've been engaged with a number of different unions that are representing the employees. And we're trying to, in Congress and in the Senate, try to make sure that we're raising this to the American people. Having them in particular, what's important is this understanding that, again, this isn't about some quest to make government work better, or efforts like that. What we see here is like all the things that Trump promised, trying to take on lowering, prices for people. He's not doing any of that. I think what it was, 66% of Americans say that, Trump's not doing enough to lower costs because they see what he's doing.
Yeah.
Creating meme coins and banking off of this, just grabbing as much smash and grab as much as possible. So I think people are understanding what we need to do is draw their attention to the corruption, draw their attention to just the blatant lawlessness that's out there that is very un-American.